Hey everyone, Final here. Today, I'll be showing you my quick and easy paint scheme for the Captain in Terminator Armour, painted with Ultramarines' first company colors. Before we start, I just want to note that this is for the multi-part Terminator Captain. It's not for the Leviathan Captain, or the Captain that's included in the starter sets. They are both pretty similar models, so you could still use this video if you want. It's just a lot harder to paint the Leviathan Captain in sub-assemblies. Anyway, speaking of sub-assemblies, there's a couple of different ways to build them. I picked the one with a tabard. For the right arm, I chose the Combi-weapon with a flamer on it. I won't be showing the other variants, but they're all painted up in mostly the same way. Same goes for the Stormbolter. Then we have the head, and then the left arm. I went with the Relic Fist for this one. However, the Relic Sword is different enough that I'll be painting that as well at the end of the video. Without further ado, let's get started. I primed all of the sub-assemblies in Mechanicus Standard Gray. I then started working on the armor with a nice thin coat of Macragge Blue. I wanted to make sure that everything was coated evenly, so I got a little bit messy in a couple of spots. Don't worry, they'll be fixed up later. At the same time, I was also painting up the armor on the other sub-assemblies as well. So after one thin coat of Macragge Blue, it doesn't look too bad, but it will need a second coat. After that, it'll look nice and clean. Next up, I'll be washing all of the Macragge Blue with Nuln Oil. It'll be a bit messy, but try not to let it pool too much. Otherwise, it'll gunk up some details. After finishing the wash, I'll let it sit for about half an hour, just to make sure that everything is dry. And that's what it'll look like. Nice and messy. To start fixing that, I'll do a heavy dry brush using Macragge Blue. This will help clean up the flat areas, but it'll leave the Nuln Oil in the recesses. After I finish with a heavy dry brush, I'll do a light dry brush using Calgar Blue, focusing on just the raised edges. And here we are, nice and blue. Now onto the tabard. I'll start off with a couple of thin coats of Rakarth Flesh, being very careful not to hit any of the blue. At the same time, I'll paint up the purity seals as well. After I get a nice coat of Rakarth Flesh, I'll be doing a wash with Seraphim Sepia, thinned 1:1 with Lamian Medium. Only on the tabard sections. While waiting for the tabard to dry, I'll be washing the purity seals with Agrax Earthshade, also thinned with Lamian Medium, about 1:1. Once the Seraphim Sepia dries, I'll be doing a light dry brush with Rakarth Flesh on the tabard. I'm leaving it a little bit fuzzy so that it looks like fabric. By then, the purity seals should be dry, so I'll be painting the seal part with Corn Red. And then washing it with Nuln Oil. For the belt, I'll be using Corvus Black, being extra careful not to hit the tabard. After that, I'll be using Lead Belcher for the metal parts on the belt. Since I already have the Lead Belcher on my palette, I'll be using it to paint up the sighter, the bolt heads, and the cabling. Next, I'll wash the Corvus Black and the Lead Belcher with Nuln Oil. And after the Nuln Oil dries, I'll be doing a light dry brush with Lead Belcher on the cabling. Back on the main body, I'll be painting up the lens using Stormhost Silver and then Blood Angel's Red contrast paint. Now I'll be working on the gold. I start off by basing any of the gold parts with Rhinox Hide. It seems weird, but it helps the gold get a nice even coat. There's a lot of gold on here, so I'll be taking my time. Once I'm done base coating the gold with Rhinox Hide, I'll go in and paint on the Retributor Armour. Here's where that Rhinox Hide layer pays off. After I'm done with the gold, I'll wash all of it with Reikland Flesh Shade. That'll make the gold look nice and warm, although maybe a little mute. Once the Reikland Flesh Shade dries, I'll be doing a dry brush using Retributor Armour on the gold. That'll help bring back some of the shine. After the Retributor Armour dry brush, I'll be doing a very light and careful dry brush using Liberator Gold. Lastly, for the metallics, I'll be using Runelord Brass on the little relic, followed by a wash using Agrax Earthshade. Once the Agrax Earthshade dries, I'll use a little bit of Runelord Brass to brighten up the edges. So far so good. Now, I'll get to work on the Crux Terminatus. I'll be working on both the knee and the shoulder pauldron one at the same time. I'll start off with a base coat of Mechanicus Standard Grey. Make sure it's properly thinned. The details on the knee pad are really shallow and can get clogged up really easily. Next, I'll apply a wash with Agrax Earthshade, making sure it really pools in the grooves. Then I'll layer on some Dawnstone. I'm just aiming for the exposed surfaces. That way, it still stays shaded around the skull. There's the knee pad one all set. Unrelated, but before I forget, I painted up the joints with Black Templar. But we're not quite done with the shoulder pauldron just yet. I'll be carefully painting up the gem holder with some Retributor Armour. And then, I'll paint the gem with Stormhost Silver. Then to wrap up the gem, I'll be painting on some Spirit Stone Red. There we go, the Crux Terminatus on the shoulder pauldron is all set. While I'm here, I might as well paint up the trim as well. I'm not doing both shoulder pauldrons at the same time. You'll see why later. I'll start off with a nice base layer of Iron Hand Steel. I know the box art has the trim as gold, but I feel like silver is more appropriate, and the Iron Hand Steel is a lot brighter than Lead Belcher. Once the Iron Hand Steel is dry, I'll wash it all with Nuln Oil. And once that dries, I'll dry brush the raised edges and surfaces with Iron Breaker. And there we have it, the left arm with a Relic Fist, all done. Now for the right pauldron, I started off with a base of Grey Sear. Grey Sear is really thin, so I'll definitely need a couple of coats. Now I can paint up the trim, including that little part that got hit with the Grey Sear, using Iron Hand Steel, Nuln Oil, and Iron Breaker again. Now for the plate, I went with Retributor Armour because I'm making mine gold. I then washed it with Agrax Earthshade, and then stippled on some Retributor Armour. I'm aiming for an old, muted gold instead of the bright, vibrant one from the Aquila. Onto the Combi-weapon. I started with Lead Belcher and painted up any areas that will stay metallic. It's okay to be a little bit messy here. It'll get covered up later. Then, I went in and coated all of the Lead Belcher with Nuln Oil. For the weapon casing, I used Abaddon Black. And then I went in and dry brushed the Abaddon Black with Eshin Grey. For the flamer, I painted it with Balthazar Gold. I also painted the ammunition with Balthazar Gold as well. After giving the Balthazar Gold some time to dry, I washed it with Agrax Earthshade. Wrapping up, I painted the little symbol with Retributor Armour, and then I painted the gem with Spirit Stone Red. Now onto the bare head. Normally, I would swap it out with a Terminator helmet, but I'm staying true to what's in the box. I started painting the skin with a couple of coats of Rakarth flesh. Once I had a solid coat of Rakarth flesh, I washed it with Guilliman flesh. Try not to have it pool too much. If it does, you can soak it up with your brush. I then did a light dry brush using Kislev flesh. I'm mainly focusing on the front, since the back half of the head is going to be covered by the Terminator armor. The teeth are very prominent in this model. I went in and painted them with Grey Sear. With that same Grey Sear, I went and painted the non-metallic parts of the helmet. For the metal parts, I used Lead Belcher. Then I washed the Lead Belcher and the Grey Sear with Nuln Oil to give it all some definition. The Nuln Oil will mess up the Grey Sear quite a bit, so I went in and carefully highlighted the edges with Grey Sear just to brighten it back up. Finally, I painted the eyelids with White Scar, and then Blood Angel's Red contrast. I also used the Blood Angel's Red on the cabling as well. Because I always forget, I painted up the neck portion with Black Templar. And here's the head, as you'd see it on the model. We're so close to being done. I'm going to hop back to the main body because we have to paint up both tactical rocks. I always leave these for the end because that's about the time that I start thinking about basing the model. So I started off with Mechanicus Standard Gray, followed by a wash using Agrax Earthshade, and then a relatively heavy dry brushing with Dawnstone. I then painted up the rebar with Lead Belcher, the spent casings using Balthazar Gold, and I washed both with Agrax Earthshade. And that's that. Technically, I could assemble and finish up the model now, but I'll quickly show you how I'd paint up the Relic Sword if my captain had one. I started off painting the blade with Lead Belcher. I did a couple of really thin coats for this one because I want it to be as smooth as possible. I then washed the blade with Nuln Oil, starting from the hilt and making sure it pools inside the lettering. Once that's completely dry, I did a heavy dry brush with Lead Belcher just to fix up the tide marks. I then did a light dry brush with Stormhose Silver, focusing on the sharp edges. For the sword handle, I started with a base of Retributor Armour. If you want a more vibrant gold, you can start with Rhinox Hide and then go to the gold. For the one I'm doing, I'm aiming for something more worn down. After I get a good coat of Retributor Armour, I'll wash it all with Agrax Earthshade. And then I'll lightly dry brush it with some Retributor Armour. For the parchment thing, I'll start with Rakarth Flesh, and then wash it with Agrax Earthshade, thinned 1:1 with Lamian Medium. I'll then paint the seal with Khorne Red, and then I'll use that red on the sword handle as well. I'll then wash both with Nuln Oil. I'll use Frostheart for the power cell, and then Spiritstone Red again for the gem. There we are, my take on the Relic Sword. Now I'm all set for basing and some assembly magic. Net result, one captain in Terminator Armour, painted up with Ultramarines' first company colors. This model was a lot of fun to paint up, and in my opinion, a lot easier than the Leviathan one. I hope that you found this guide useful for painting up your own captain. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.